Hey everyone, it's Patricia. Welcome to episode 2 of the Bad Chinese Teacher podcast. I had a chance to sit down with my friend Gio Esposito. We went to middle school and high school together. We both sang in choir, and now we're still singing together in the New Haven Chorale in Connecticut, where we both live. A few weeks ago, Gio and I had a chance to debut a choral work at Carnegie Hall in New York. What made this piece special was not just the fact that we got to sing at Carnegie Hall, but that the piece was in Chinese and told the story of the first Chinese immigrants to the United States. We had a chance to catch up and recap our experiences together and talked a bit about what it was like to perform at Carnegie, what the rehearsal process was like, and what the piece meant to each of us. Hope you enjoy. Basically, I feel like the only reason why I'm doing this is because the program from Carnegie Hall doesn't actually have my name on it.
Right.
Because
this is for posterity.
Yeah. So like, this is proof that we actually sang at Carnegie Hall.
Right.
This was about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
October
1st.
October 1st, right? Not October 10th.
Yep.
So just for context, how did we end up here?
Well, I think at least, it all started because of our relationship with the New Haven Chorale, being in the chorale, and Charles Liu, who coordinated really all the efforts on the East Coast, was the point man and is in the chorale. So he basically asked me in the middle of the summer if I wanted to join, and then I asked you, talking about it, and a couple rehearsals later, and we were back at Carnegie.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when you said that you mentioned it to me, this was not like a couple of like days after you joined. This was literally like 3 weeks. 3 weeks before the performance.
Right.
And the thing is that, like, this announcement came out. So just for context, so we sing, Gio and I sing in the New Haven Chorale, which is like a community choir. And then there's this other choir that is like all Chinese people that is based in New Haven. I think they're called like the Yale Chinese Oratory. Camerata something.
Yep.
I think they have a Chinese name as well that is also escaping me. But so a person who sings in that choir also sings in the choir that we're in, and he put out this notice like in May, really early.
Actually probably April, because it was the end of our season last year. Right.
And this was, so it was April. That was like a good half a year out from the concert.
Right.
So pretty serious stuff. But I had originally, like, because the oratorio was something that this organization does annually, and this year the work was on the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, which is basically, if you don't know, really important part of Chinese American history, and I'm Chinese American, and I was like, that's really important. Was originally going to do it, stepped off for personal reasons, and then Gio convinced me to do it again 3 weeks before. And like, common courtesy says that you really should not jump on a project 3 weeks before, especially if everyone
have been working on it for months.
4 months, right? And it wasn't even just like casual rehearsals. It was like, we found out later that not only were people rehearsing 2.5 hours a week, it was like 2.5 hours
twice a week. Yeah, there was extra rehearsals. So originally it was Wednesdays for I think 2.5 hours. And then I got on in the middle of August. So full, like 10 full weeks. And but then they started doing a second night for people who felt like they needed more time with the piece. And because it was a brand new piece, I mean, every week we'd get new pieces of it, or we'd get changes. They'd say, all right, measure 17 through 25, the tenors sing a fourth up, so write that into your score or print out a new copy. Literally the first day we got to rehearsal, like whenever it was in August, and Charles goes, all right, raise your hand if you printed out the music today or yesterday. And me and maybe like 3 or 4 other people raised their hand. He's like, everybody else, your music's no good. It's completely different. Throw it away.
That's insane. So it's worth to notice that like this piece was written for this performance, right? Which is why there were the constant revisions.
Right.
Like, there was a person who was commissioned to write this piece that was going to be debuted at Carnegie Hall. And so just a little context as to what this whole thing and why it was at Carnegie Hall. So this is an event that's held every year by the U.S. China Music Institute at Bard College Conservatory in New York. And this year, just reading from their kind of press release, says that the second annual China Now Music Festival celebrated milestones in the history of U.S.-China relations through music. Highlights included the world premiere of a symphonic oratorio by Pulitzer-prize winning composer Zhou Long, honoring Chinese workers on the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad, and the China Now Music Festival Gala at Carnegie Hall. So that's us. And the piece itself was called Men of Iron and the Golden Spike. 铁汉金钉, a symphonic oratorio, is now a major new work by Pulitzer Prize winning composer. They seem to really, that point's really important. Yeah, like this is like legitimizing what we're doing. Like this person is like a real composer. Right. Pulitzer Prize winning composer Zhou Long and lyricist Su Wei for a full symphony orchestra, soloists, and a mixed chorus, that's us, in honor of the Chinese railroad workers of the American West. The work reflects the epic history of nearly 20,000 Chinese laborers who contributed to the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 150 years ago. So that's the context of the piece, and it seems like this piece was like commissioned, and they were just looking to like fill bodies for the choral. Do you know where the what's it called, the symphony orchestra came from? Where were
they're from Bard. They were all student musicians from Bard. So the conductor was a Bard professor, as well as the entire student, the student orchestra. And I think there may have been some faculty from Bard there, because there were definitely some older folks. But the majority of them were students.
Gotcha.
And they actually then flew out to Stanford to do the second rehearsal. That whole group got to go to Stanford for the other rehearsal.
Right.
So that was the other thing, right? We did our piece on Tuesday, October 1st, and I think on that Saturday, they went, and there was a group from the West Coast that did the same performance.
Yeah.
And the orchestra got to go. So it was a nice little perk for the students, I'm sure, to fly out. I don't know if they had to pay or if the department picked it up or what, but a lot of the students I know are going to do the other part.
So there's this like, I don't even want to call it like an encore performance, because it was like legit. There were new people coming in.
Exactly.
In Stanford too. So it was performed twice.
Those people I think were actually more professional singers,
They were better.
They were, so with our group, I think, originally the reason why Charles asked me and a few other Americans to do it was because we actually had singing backgrounds. Whereas I think we talked about this previously, that a lot of the people in the Chinese choir are more, it's a social thing. They're not there because they really like to sing. It's more of a social hour. So I think they kind of asked us for a little bit more of a backbone to help with some of the singing. There were some folks from the Greater Hartford Opera or Operatic Choir, whatever they're called, who came and joined. And we kind of, I guess, gave a little bit of a backbone to at least our rehearsals. I felt like the people in New York and those choirs were a little bit better, musically than some of the people in our group. But it was, even so, it was I thought even the New Haven group was strong enough to carry the piece on our own by the time we got there.
Yeah, after
maybe not leading up, but by the time we got there.
6 months of rehearsals, twice, like 5 hours a week.
Right.
Yeah, no, it stands to mention that, like, again, the choir that we were based out of, or the choir that we later joined, was like you said, it's a community choir, but it was like, it's a social activity.
Yeah.
And so when you take that, like, basically, what is a choir? Like, just a bunch of people who like really like to sing, and that's kind of the premise for it. And then all of a sudden you have like Carnegie Hall.
Right.
If I were the concertmaster, if I were like the conductor, I would be like freaking out.
Yeah.
Right. And I imagine that like Charles and Maestro Tai were in the same place for much of the process.
Yes. Although I don't know how much the conductor really had say in until like a week or two before, or that's not true. So he came, I think, 3 weeks before the concert. They did 3 joint rehearsals. So there was one in New Haven, there was one in New York, and then there were the ones the weekend before the concert. Prior to that, I remember Charles saying in rehearsals, he'd go, "All right, I'm waiting for the conductor to tell me how he wants to do this, and I don't know." So, and then Zhou Long was at our rehearsals and would say, "Oh no, I don't want it like that. I want it this way." And the conductor would go, "Oh, okay. The composer has spoken, and we're going to do this part faster. We're going to do this part slower." We had something. I really liked the way we were doing the ending of the second movement with a big retard, and they subdivided the beats because it was in, I think, 6/8. And then Zhou Long goes, no, I don't want you to stop there. Keep going. It was like, oh, okay. And there was no retard. It was just, a tempo the whole time. And that was it. It was like, oh, okay. All right. So we had to all do the things and change things on the fly because we had the composer there to say what goes.
It's like if you look on it really positively, it's like this is a living piece of music.
Oh, absolutely.
And and you see it grow and evolve as it goes on. But like if you look at it from a practical perspective, you're like, I don't want to print out another 16 pages of the same piece.
I know.
Yeah. So we rehearse. I think I came to a total of 3 rehearsals out of the 75 million which really, I'm so terrible. But
you handled it and you knew your part and you were one of the people who could speak Chinese and also was a really good singer. I think that was a good part where Charles goes, I know you're a very good singer. You don't have to come to these things. You're good.
The only reason why Charles even let me join 3 weeks in, because no conductor should ever do that, because that's just bad etiquette. So, but the only reason why he let me in was literally he was like, I'm only letting you do this because 1, I know you sing,
right,
and 2, you're Chinese American and this is your history. And I'm like, those are also the reasons why I am doing this. And I'm glad we were on the same page. But I did I felt a little bad. Just because you see folks who are rehearsing a lot and really, it's a lot of time.
Oh, definitely.
Right? And I'm sure that I feel like based on what I know, a lot of the people in that choir are semi-retired, and so maybe they do have a lot of time, and it is a social thing for them, but it is also a lot of work.
Right.
Okay, so we rehearse a lot or a little, and the performance comes. It's October 1st.
Yep.
Busy weekends for the both of us.
Right. You were traveling.
I was traveling.
I had a play going on the following 2 days later, so I missed a dress rehearsal, and it was a lot, but it was, it was a busy week. I had everything all at once, but actually it was a really busy month, but that's okay because we got to sing at Carnegie and now I don't have to do as much anymore.
No, it's one of those things, I keep saying that, right? I remember I mentioned this offhandedly to my supervisor at work, my principal, because I needed time off, and he was like, what?
Yeah.
You should take, there should be a banner. And I was like, please don't. It's seriously not that
morning
big of
announcements
a deal.
for a week and a half straight.
Yeah, and that feels like that's such an elitist thing to say, because people literally, if you're not a music person or you haven't existed on this planet for the past 150 years, Carnegie Hall is a big deal, right? It's if you're a classical
it's the Olympics
musician,
for singing.
it really is. There is that cliched phrase, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Right, practice.
Just practice. Yeah. And so it's a really big deal to sing at Carnegie Hall, but this was not our first time.
No.
When was the first time we actually made our debut at Carnegie? That sounds terrible.
Our debut at Carnegie Hall was May 1st, 2006.
Oh my gosh, you remember that?
No, 2007. Sorry, 2007. Where we went with our high school choir as part of a Music in Our Schools feature thing that happened at Carnegie. I remember there was a Suzuki school from New York City, just because I remember that small little boy who wouldn't play this song. He was just standing with his bow out and everybody, the teachers were trying to come on and get him to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or whatever. And this kid must have been 2 or 3 with a tiny little violin.
So this is a very elite, very prestigious.
The bar was high.
Oh yeah.
But then they had the Moonglowers, who were a high school jazz band from New Jersey. I think they're the first high school jazz band in the country. That could be completely wrong, but I think that was their claim or whatever. And they killed it. They were fantastic. They were a group that obviously valued jazz as a culture and as a history, and they played at this thing. But I remember we did a couple things. The placard is that we had, the little photo montage is still up in the choir lobby.
Oh yeah,
with the ticket, with the picture of Julia, with the Thoroughly Modern Millie suitcase. Yeah. So that's still all there even though 12 years later the teacher has retired. Our teacher, Miss Kathy Ann Roding, is retired. They still have a lot of those little photo collages. And so that was our first time, and it's really good as an amateur singer to be able to say, I sang at Carnegie a couple times. It's funny when the professionals be like, oh, yeah, I remember the first time I sang at Carnegie Hall, and I'll be like, oh yeah, me too.
I'm in the same league. Me too. We're just as good. We're in the same level.
This is your day job? Yeah, it's a hobby. Yeah. I've sung it twice
casuals,
now.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that's such because the thing is it's not as if our choir program was okay, right?
I would say it was more than okay.
Okay, it was good.
For a high school choir program, I think, we all did it, especially too for our class, where no one was a music major. Nobody went on to pursue careers in music. We all had other interests, and this was definitely our hobby first. And I think we never overinflated the importance of it like some people tend to do when they're in high school.
You're right.
I think we all kind of understood that it was something we were doing for fun, but we knew that it was something we took seriously. No, but none of us wanted to do anything badly.
Yeah.
We all wanted to do well in everything that we did. So when we went to Italy our senior year and we won that award for that, vocal jazz competition, like that was really cool for us.
Right. Yeah. Like who else would ever, like the fact that it was like a 28-person vocal jazz ensemble. That's like not a thing. But the thing is that I think the one thing I really appreciated from our choir music performing arts experience was like, yeah, you're right. Like none of us were like serious music majors. None of us were like conservatory people. Or really were thinking in that direction. But our teacher just really allowed us to have these opportunities. Oh, yeah. Right. Like I remember talking to her after I graduated and being like, she had mentioned that one of her goals as a teacher was to have us experience big things, right? Let us be part of things that were a big deal. Like whether that be singing at Carnegie Hall, even though it's under the pretext of like a 2-3-year-old. Playing Tinkle Tinkle Little Star. Or like she would give us like Renaissance, like Palestrina, polyphonic music. That was like, vocal, like technique wise, it's not as if like any of us were like prodigies. Exactly. But it was like an intellectual exercise. Sure. And like just being in that space and being like understanding the bigness of all of it.
Oh, absolutely.
That was a big deal.
Or then going and doing Manhattan Transfer music where where the jazz harmonies are ridiculous and mind bending and you have to really know your stuff.
I look back to like the music that we did in high school and I'm just like, I haven't touched a lot of like intense choral music except for what we do every week at Mandarin Chorale. And I'm just like, dude, like we as high schoolers read this music, we learned it, and
did well and performed it well,
and like breaking every stereotype that choir people can't read music, which is like actually not that far from the truth sometimes.
Wait, it goes up, the pitch goes up, like I sing higher,
dude. I remember this happened in one of like the what's it called, cantata rehearsals for the Chinese thing. Like I think one of the conductors was just so frustrated at one point where he literally just said, if the little black dot goes up, your voice goes up. So real professionals here. And I'm just like, like life of orchestra people are probably just cackling right now because they actually have to read music and singers don't. So anyway, it's October 1st. We're there. Busy weekend for the both of us, coming back to just like a big space as adults now, which is kind of exciting. Performance happens. What do you remember from that? Like what sticks in your mind?
Okay, well, all right. So this is my soapbox minute, I guess. Every time somebody asks me, you get to sing at Woolsey Hall, which we do, once a year with the Mandarin Chorale, Yale, which is absolutely spectacular. To be in that room or sing at Carnegie. They go, oh yeah, it must be so much fun to be up there. And my, I don't know, high horse, I'm full of myself moment is, well, when you're singing something like that, you're really at service to the music. You don't get the time to appreciate what you're doing because you can't make a mistake. You got to pay attention to what you're doing. It's the audience is there and your job as a performer is to give them a good performance. So that's kind of how I look at it, where I'm, especially at a place like Carnegie or Woolsey, where if you take a second to listen to yourself, you're already a beat behind. You have to just watch the conductor and stay on the music. So that is the sort of thing where, I was kind of focused, at least tried to be focused on the majority of what I could do. However, what was very nice was during movement 6, the Moonlight movement, which is like probably the longest movement in the piece. It's probably 10 or 12 minutes, just women and soloists. And I had 12 minutes to stand there on the stage and actually get to take it in. And this was really nice. This was actually the part where I'm standing on there. I had a couple minutes. I didn't really have to pay attention because I knew I wasn't coming in for 12 minutes. And I go, this is it. This is Carnegie. Here I am. It was a really good crowd. I'm like, this is it. People strive their whole lives to get here and don't and want to do it as a career milestone as professionals. Here I am as a 27-year-old amateur singer on here for the second time. It's like, I have a CD on my phone. It's Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane live at Carnegie Hall. Here I am. That's the stage. Boom. And that was a moment that I really got to appreciate, at least just on a personal level, what was going on and and the reality of being there, and as somebody who kind of worked on this peripherally for 12 weeks or whatever, and honestly, I thought the performance was better than we had done in any rehearsal, which was good. That was good. It really came together at the end. We had, I don't know, maybe 20 or so ringers who came in at the last minute. And thank you. Yeah, there was a couple points that were supposed to be really delicate. And he goes, all right, we're just going to have the professionals do this part. Good. Yeah, absolutely. But and it was really well attended. I was surprised just how well. I mean, a Tuesday night concert at Carnegie, they didn't have like the top level open, but other than that, it seemed pretty full. We had, I don't know, a 5-minute standing ovation. There were like 5 curtain calls that the soloist and the composer and the lyricist and the conductor kept coming back out, and that was, I thought, was a testament to how the music touched a lot of the people on a personal level. I mean, even my American white parents, although, my parents are the children of immigrants too, so they can connect with the immigrant story. And my mom especially said, oh yeah, I liked, because it told the story and I could follow along, because it was an oratorio. I think it was actually based on an opera that Zhou Long tried to write many years ago that never went through. And so they took a lot of the story elements from this actual opera that was getting written and converted it into an oratorio. And so it did tell a nice story about, like, a personal story, as opposed to just like, more broad ideas. It told like an actual love story between an immigrant and an American, and then the immigrant's brother dies in the avalanche, saving the American foreman. And on a personal level, you can understand what's happening on the story. It's you have these the broader story of the immigrants coming here, working on the railroad, opening up the West Coast to trade and commerce, and then being terribly treated and sent back and excluded, the Chinese Exclusion Act that comes on. But you have the specific individual story of just a love story that's relatable through time and culture.
Yeah, I think one thing that was kind of an overarching theme, you heard this in like the narration at the beginning, at the end of the piece, was that these immigrants, the fact is that what they're most known for is the fact that we don't know much about them. Right. Like, they did so much work and very little of the credit. And even when like the spike was put down, like, they were not invited to like the ceremony, the opening ceremony. And so, what art does is that it humanizes history. And I think, yeah, you're right. Like, the fact that this was a story, and the thing is, like, making it a story makes it so accessible to people, right? Like, you can study history back and forth and up and down, but like, to be able to bring it to life, it creates empathy within people, which is really quite special. And I love what you said about like knowing that the space that we were in, it's not just a space, right? Like, it's famous and it has its reputation, but it's like, dude, there were people who we like look up to, like big deals, legends. Yeah, they stood in that same space. And like, I don't know, I've been like trying to get myself back into classical music because 12 years of piano study should, that'd feel bad, right? Good luck. Yes, but it's like, I think one of the things that really makes classical music great is like, obviously it's great music, but also it's like, this was played 300 years ago, right? The exact same thing. Right. Like, people in history listen to the same things, and it lives on, and it's like timeless. And so I mean, this is a modern piece, right? This piece that we sang was literally just composed. Two days ago? Yeah, 2 days before the performance. Yeah, right. And but at the same time, it's like, that legacy of just classical music or classical form is something that's quite special. But some other things that came up, I think, so it was a packed house. I've never seen that many Chinese people in one space for classical music ever. Like, it's not really, I mean, it's not as if like Chinese people don't get classical music. There is history too as to why it's not as mainstream. I'll talk about that in a bit, but like, I've never seen that many Chinese people in one space. Of course, there was clapping between every single movement, which is like, okay, if you don't know, that's like a really hoity-toity faux pas. Like, it makes sense to a point, but like, at the same time, if you clap, it's like actually kind of understandable.
In between the movements. Although there is like a couple times every once in a while you'll have a piece where you have to go start singing right from the end of the last piece, and especially if you need like your starting pitch to like change notes to figure out where you have to come in on the next movement. It's like the applause break can screw you up, but For this, yeah, I mean, if you have an orchestra behind you, it's usually all right. But it is just a faux pas to clap between movements.
Have you ever clapped between movements?
I think the first time, and then somebody was like, no, you can't do that. It's like, well, I better never applaud again.
Yeah.
Until the conductor puts his arms down, turns around, and like gives a big smile, then you can clap.
Then you have permission.
And you know you're good.
Yeah. I feel like the only times in which I've clapped between movements, it's only after other people start clapping.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I guess
they know better than me.
Yes, exactly. I'm not going to be the one who's like, I'm not clapping because I know better. Like, please.
Especially for something like Carmina Burana that has like 23 movements.
Oh, my gosh.
It's like, all right, you stand there for one straight hour in silence, and then you get, the uproarious applause at the end. It's like...
Can I just say, as you mentioned that, I know that, again, choir people have nothing to complain about when it comes to, orchestra people who have to read music. But, standing up there for, ages, every single time we're doing a piece, I'm just, looking at the orchestra and I'm like, man, must be nice to have a chair. Must be nice. I'm here, my feet are numb. And my lungs are bleeding,
right? And my shoulder hurts from holding my folder.
My folder's so heavy. Yeah. Anyway, I think the thing that will stick in my mind which is terrible, is the fact that at the last movement.
Oh yeah.
The last beat.
Perfectly timed.
I wish someone recorded this because it was incredible.
I know.
Someone's phone goes off.
Right. It was the last note, rap, the conductor waves off the note, and then the do. And it was like, that could, 1, 2, 3. It was just
right on tempo.
Perfectly. Yeah, exactly. They didn't miss a beat. It was fantastic.
Poetic, how poetic. I hope there's a recording of this somewhere, just because it's you see on YouTube, I don't know, this is what I do in my spare time, all those on YouTube, classical music fails where that happens, the classic Nokia ringtone, and then but it was Carnegie Hall, literally the last movement, literally right on tempo.
It was genuinely perfect. They could not have done it if they tried. It was really impressive.
Yeah. That aside though, it was just an overall great experience. The soloists though, so good. The
two brothers blew me away. There were the two parts where they had harmonies together, and they were so incredible. All the soloists were very good, but those two guys were the ones that impressed me the most. They were just fantastic.
Yeah. Apparently, I want to say the baritone.
Yeah.
I did a little stalking afterward. Or I read his bio and then I did a little stalking. But he actually competed in this Chinese. Did you know?
The Chinese American Idol. Basically. Yeah.
But,
I saw that.
But he competed as a classical opera person.
Okay.
Which was kind of wild. I think he wasn't the only person who was in that boat. But yeah, I was I was first of all surprised that they could find Chinese people to sing solos, because again, opera, Western music, Western classical music, and Chinese society
don't really mix.
No, they don't cross paths that often. Particularly vocal music, orchestral music, something else, but vocal music in particular. So I was really surprised. First of all, he studies at Yale.
He's an MFA student right now.
He's local, which is wow,
interesting. Cool.
So many things intersecting, but those soloists were something else. And there's that little girl.
Yeah, she was incredible.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the child soloist. She must have been 12 years old, and was just. She sounded exactly like that 2-string instrument. Her voice had such a similar quality to it. It was beautiful. Yeah. It was really, the soloists were fantastic. The piece was really nice. As far as modern music goes, it wasn't, what you think of as modern orchestral music, where it's atonal or, the harmonies are really weird or bad. It was a lot. It was definitely based in Chinese traditional music. It was a lot of fourths and, but no, I thought, the music was nice. The soloists were fantastic. And the story I told was really, really, touching and personalizing to the story.
Yeah, I think as I was telling friends about this thing, because I think saying that you're performing at Carnegie Hall merits an explanation. I think the one thing I kept saying, just because I kept saying that the music is really good. Yeah. Right. The piece of music itself. And the thing is, I felt like I was saying that because I was I can't vouch for the quality of the choir that I'm singing in.
But the piece
though, real good. Singers, not so much. And I want to talk a little bit about the rehearsal process, because number one, you attended more rehearsals than I did. Number two, I'm contrasting this to what we do in New Haven Chorale every week. And I'm just so you've been in New Haven Chorale for what?
5 years.
Dang, 5 years.
This is my 5th year, but I joined in the spring, so I'll come in January, it'll be my started my sixth year.
Wow. Yeah. I'm on my third year.
Right.
And so New Haven Chorale is like, it's based out of New Haven. And so, which sounds like a very hoity-tinky little town, but it's like, it's the home of Yale University, and it has like its legacy in terms of, music. There are people who are very interested in music, but at the same time, it's still like a community.
Right. I mean, the New Haven Chorale is, I know our director, Dr. Ed Bolhovac, would take a lot of chagrin to say that we are a community choir, because that's basically what he threatens us with all the time. He'll say, you want to just be a community choir, or do you want to be better? It's like an 80+ person group auditioned. Everybody in the group knows how to sing and does a good job. So,
and can read music.
Yeah. So it is a community choir, but I think we do a little bit more than just, show up and sing because you like to sing. Everybody there kind of has a handle on music. They're good singers who do a good job with the pieces that we do, and we do hard stuff in that group.
Yeah.
I really like working with Ed. I think he's a phenomenal conductor. I think he knows exactly how to get the best out of us. But he's a stickler. He is a stickler for a lot of things. If it comes to pronunciation of a vowel or your mouth shape on certain things that are causing you to flat or sharp on some note, he'll stop and he'll tell you, and he'll say, fix this mistake. And if you make the mistake again, he'll stop and he'll tell you. I felt like the rehearsal process for Men of Iron was similar because Charles was running the rehearsals for New Haven, and I think he took a lot from our chorale rehearsals. I don't know what his role is in the Chinese camerata when they're doing their regular rehearsals.
I think he's the actual conductor for year round.
Right. So because he definitely felt comfortable. He knew what he was doing conducting, and even just as simple as like putting out the beats with a stick. Seemed like he knew what he was doing. So I think he took a lot from what Ed does. I don't know. They seem similar. It was a lot of stopping when the vowel was wrong, which was a big thing, especially with that da hi that got done a million times over and over again.
Sorry, it's trauma.
That was some sort of things that were similar. He took the time to explain to us what the piece was about, because the majority of our group in New Haven at least was Chinese and could read and speak, but there were maybe 10 Americans who couldn't read Chinese, and so he would take the time to give us the explanation of the story and the translation of the lyrics, which gives you context as a singer to what story are you telling, why, oh hey, you've sung this Hayao Hunga 100 times, literally 100 times in this piece. Hey, this is the part right after the brother died in an avalanche. You should be sad, right? You should sing this sad.
Hayao sounded like the seven dwarves going to work.
Right, hi ho, hi ho. Yeah. So that there were similarities in the process. I think he was a little more Charles was more flexible than Ed would have been, obviously, because Ed expects a high level of performance from the chorale.
Yeah, I mean, if you even look at Ed's resume, it's crazy. It's impressive.
crazy.
Is he currently a professor at Hart School of Music?
Yep.
Yeah, so he comes down. He live in Hartford? I don't know.
I don't know where he lives.
Yeah, but he comes down. I mean, imagine that commute, right? So he's dedicated, and he's also lived so many. He speaks Chinese.
He speaks 6 languages.
Oh my gosh!
He got his PhD in Hungary, so he's fluent in Hungarian, English. I think he can do Chinese, Latin, or Chinese, Italian, French. Probably he's German. Polish, he's ridiculous. He can speak a ridiculous amount of languages.
Yeah,
he's really an impressive person, and I do really enjoy rehearsing with him and singing under him, because he knows how to get the best out of us. We sound good. We do impressive music. We do interesting things, and it's the therapeutical aspect of music where you're get to go and sing for 2.5 hours once a week, and you don't have to worry about anything else. It doesn't matter if you had a hard day at work or if you've got stuff that you've got to worry about. I mean, when you're there, it's just you're focused on the music, and that's all you have to worry about.
Yeah. I think one thing, I remember my first rehearsal, stepping in, so it's literally here's your music, and I had thought that everyone had learned the music beforehand because it was going. Yeah. He was literally just running it all parts, full tempo, just and I was looking at this, and I was looking at the people around me, and I was like, y'all know this already?
Yeah, nobody's hanging on for dear life.
Yeah, and I think as I'm seeing him when he teaches, right? Because I think I'm taking a lot of cues about his teaching style because I also teach. And so what's interesting about him is that he will So it's when it's clear that everyone is sight reading everything for the first time, he doesn't ever actually acknowledge that. He's not just straight up like, yo, y'all suck.
Yeah,
and y'all are like sight reading for the first time.
Right.
He's like, why aren't you paying attention to the dynamics? I'm like, excuse me, I like am still reading ledger lines.
Right.
I don't care what the dynamics are. But I find that to be such a powerful thing because it's like, I think he obviously knows that like people are struggling with notes at that point because it's literally like the first time we're reading a piece of Handel. I hate Handel, by the way.
Those runs are not easy.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know how much I hated Handel until I started singing Handel.
Right, everybody has Hallelujah chorus. You're like, okay, it's not so bad, and it's like, no, the rest of the Messiah is not easy.
No.
The guy sitting next to me at rehearsal, he was like, I'm like, what, do you have this one memorized? He's like, yeah, I've done the Messiah 38 times. I was like, well, okay, sounds good. I'll defer to you. I'm going to keep my ear open and I'll defer to you on these runs.
Peasants, right?
I know.
Like, oh, we sang the Hallelujah chorus like 4 times.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no. He's performed the whole Messiah 38 times.
Which also tells you that like the people, like we lower the average age of the chorale by like a good 35 years.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is significantly older than us. And I mean, all of them have been singing with the chorale for like literal decades, right?
Oh, yeah.
A long time.
Paul, one of the older basses, he's been in the group for like 47 years. It's our 70th season this year. He's been in for like 47 years.
Yeah.
And other people who, since it is a lot of older people, it's people who settle in Connecticut. So I know one of the guys that I sit near sometimes, he's sung through glee clubs in New York for 20 years, and then he moved to Connecticut in his late 30s, and then joined the chorale in his 50s, and he's been in now for 20 years.
Yeah.
So people really, the group of people have a history of choral singing to the point where it makes sense as to why we're all pretty good at singing.
Yeah,
do a good job.
I just can't imagine like keeping up with the same thing for 42 years. I think that's insane and really kind of beautiful when you think about it.
Like a marriage.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to be like when I'm like 75, but hopefully
still singing.
Hopefully still singing with the New Haven chorale. We'll see. But like, I don't know. I'm just struck by like how, obviously Ed has high standards for us, and it's easy to like throw that term out, but I was just so intrigued by like how he assumes already that we're practicing music every day. Right. Do you do that?
Although he did say, so he went over, I think you might have been out this week. It was like a couple weeks ago, because I took the whole month of September off because I had these rehearsals for the play I was in. So I came back in October and really getting thrown into it. I mean, we have a concert 6 days from today. The Halloween concert, which in and of itself is a little like kitschy, and we're in costume, and it's for the kids. It's for the kids, but he said the other day, he goes, listen, you need to do something for chorale every day. Whether that's, he's like, so today you're here. Tomorrow, think about it a little bit. Just think about just remember that you're in the chorale. Wednesday, maybe take out your music and look at it. Thursday, just remember you're in the chorale again. So he fully acknowledges that this is a hobby for everybody. None of us are professionals. We're doing it because we love music, and because, as he likes to say, the people in the chorale are a special type. The people keep coming back year after year because everybody in the chorale really has the need to make music. It's the sort of thing where you have it in your bones and your DNA that you need to have that creative outlet. So he understands people are doing it for fun, but by the same token, we all want to do a good job. So he reminds you on some of the harder pieces, like the Handel we're doing right now. Hey, this is tricky. Look at it. Even if you don't take out at your piano and play the notes, like at least look at it, remember how it goes, do a breathing exercise, get on your core. And so I think I don't think he expects everybody to like actually take out and rehearse every day, but he also, we're only there for 2.5 hours a week, so you need to have your stuff together. So if you're missing something, take a look at it.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking. So the last episode that I recorded by myself last night talked a little bit about the idea of practice vis-a-vis language learning, right? The idea that if you're and you've learned languages before. We were in the same Spanish class in high school for a long time.
Yeah.
But you also studied Italian in college.
Yeah, I did. I took a couple years of Italian and have continued to study it.
Nice.
Since then, I'm like pretty okay. I can get by. If I was like 2 weeks in Italy, I think I'd be mint.
Yeah.
What the best story I have about that, one time Emmett and I were out at Eli's and we heard a couple guys like walk by speaking Italian. He's like, I'll go introduce us. So I was like, all right, I'll get another beer. So we went in, I get a couple beers for us, and he walks out and he's like, ecco Giovanni. And everyone's like, oh, Giovanni, piacere. And I sat down with them and they spoke enough English and I spoke enough Italian. We had a full conversation like the whole night.
Wow.
And at one point, one of them turns to me and he goes, "Your Italian is better than my English." And I was like, "Well, your English is pretty damn good, so I'll take that as a compliment." So yeah, I feel pretty comfortable in Italian, and I've like been trying to learn German kind of for the last 3 years.
All the requisite choir languages.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, my German vocabulary is not bad. I'll be surprised at how much I can read and how many words I know, but I cannot string a sentence together because I don't have any practice with speaking. So sometimes I'll try to think in the German, and that's my vocabulary is surprisingly good to me. Like every once in a while, I go like, how do I know all these words?
Are there a lot of cognates in German?
It's weird. It's super weird. There are a lot of romantic language cognates. So you'll look at things and go like, oh, this is similar to Italian. Oh, this is similar to Spanish. Yeah, there are some things that make sense in English, but it's not as like ridden with cognates as you would think.
Gotcha.
But like the word for German to read is lesen and soler and leggere. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, all right, so that's like something that you find similar. It's like, all right, that's interesting. Okay. But then they also take in German, like they throw all words together, they combine the words. So like breakfast is Frühstück and früh means early. So it's like your early meal. There you go. I don't know what struck means. It's probably something like food, meal. Yeah. So it's like but literally the word früh is early.
I mean, I feel like that makes a little more sense logically than breakfast.
Dinner is Abendessen, which means evening eating. Essen is to eat. Abend means evening, so it's your evening meal, your Abendessen.
It makes sense.
Yeah, Mittagessen is lunch, midday eating. I don't know, whatever. That's another thing. Yeah, so I know on your outline we had something about language through music. So the entire reason I decided to learn German was because when I first did, I think it was the Jeptha chorus in chorale. I think that's a Beethoven piece, and we did one movement from it, and I didn't know how to speak any German. We had done a little bit of it in high school with Carmina, but we did it with a weird accent that
is not real German.
That was not real German. It was a weird thing. We don't have to go into it. But so I really didn't know any German. And one of the guys goes, "Oh, if you want, I can let you know, and we could sit down and I'll go over the pronunciation with you." And I went,
"This is in the chorale.
This is in chorale.
Random member of the chorale."
Yeah, and I went, "That's cool. I think I'm going to learn German, so I don't have to talk to you about it, so I can do it on my own." So that has driven me to like kind of get it. And the other thing too is it's as a chemist, German is like a mother tongue to chemists. Things have been translated now because it's 2019, but all the original chemistry was done in Germany, written and published in German. So it's kind of like a heritage thing, for a professional heritage thing. So it's like, I've been thinking about it, I've been playing with the idea, and I finished the Duolingo Italian skills. So I was like, I'll do German. I'll start German. So that was kind of the reason I went into it. But definitely like, I don't know anything in Chinese. I can't differentiate between Mandarin and Cantonese. They had the the transliteration underneath written in the English pronunciation, and that's what I tried to do. And if one thing was written IH, and then I heard other people kind of going into H accent, then I'm like, all right, I'll put a little umlaut on it, and that's what I'll do. That's how I just tried to like morph my vowel tones to what was going on around me. Whether it was right or wrong, it doesn't matter at that point. You just want to be together. Better to be a little bit wrong together than to have 4 different notes going on with 3 different people being wrong and one person being right because I'm the right one. It's like, don't worry about it, just be the same.
I think that's such a good like language learning skill, like the idea of noticing when you are, because the thing is like you could teach someone back and forth like this is how you pronounce the thing, but really what it comes down to like, hey, do you hear how that person's saying it? Right. You should say the same thing.
Exactly.
Right? And that's like how you differentiate between like someone who is like has a good native sounding accent versus someone who just like still sounds like a foreigner.
Right.
So yeah, I think that idea, and this is something that I tried like because my kids are young, and so this is like the details of like when you're learning a language as an adult and you're self motivated, these are the things that you're willingly picking up. But if you're doing it for a grade, because it's required of you, right, it's really hard.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's super cool though, that your motivation to like learn another language wasn't sprouted up because you like, I don't know, really enjoyed beer or pretzels. Like, I feel like that's just such an overdone, this is sacrilege in like language teaching world, but I just feel like that's such an overdone thing, right? The assumption that like you learn a language because you're just so enamored with the culture. Right. But the thing is, like, what is the culture? Is it just like, you know, because I struggle every year teaching like Chinese New Year.
Right.
Which is like such a mainstay as a Chinese teacher. You're like, this is the major holiday. We have a bunch of them, but this is like the one.
Right.
And so you obviously go all out, right? And I'm just like, I came to a point one year where I was just like, I really hate teaching this. Why? Because I don't actually know that much about Chinese New Year. This is not what is important to me. I mean, not that should dictate like what I teach and what I don't.
Sure.
Like, my kids know what Chinese New Year is and they know like the basic tenets, but it's not like, I find it really hard to believe that unless you're like a super nerd, as a 17-year-old kid, that like you're learning a language because you just really love Tang poetry, or you really love like Italian arias.
Right.
Italian, right? Unless you like, you have to, right? Unless you're like, you're a vocalist. Choral
right.
Then it becomes like a thing of necessity. But I think, you know, a lot of people say that like singing music is one of the things that like is a good way to teach language, and there's some logic to that, because like singing is memorable, and you can just like it's easier to remember something through a melody than it is to just like straight up words. But do you think that like music, like I should ask you this, do you feel more intrigued about Chinese culture and history as a result of this? And you can be honest, right?
So I've always kind of thought of myself as a student of history. You know, my very broad education at Providence with a lot of, I mean, I took that 4-semester Western Civ class. So I've always kind of seen myself as a student of history, with a kind of a broad understanding and appreciation of a lot of different things. I have a shallow knowledge on a lot of subjects. So, but Eastern culture, Chinese culture, something I really don't know a lot of because we never got taught it. I mean, that's
true.
That's a whole biased thing we could talk about at another point if you wanted. But, and also because it's just complicated. There's like 5,000 years of really well documented history. So
you bet.
Yeah, right. So we try to glaze over that because it's kind of easier to be like, you know, hey, Rome, Greece, like ancient Rome, ancient Greece, and nothing Renaissance, and then we learn. You know, so we have like 700 years of history. Do I feel I have I knew that the Chinese railroad worker was a thing. I've known that because
of American history. Yeah.
You know? And I've known that America has a policy of hating whoever's the newest immigrant group. Right now it's Latinos who face, you know, discrimination and build the wall and all that crap, all that nonsense.
Yeah.
And pretty soon when the next group comes in from wherever, then it'll be the Latinos who have a chance to hate on the new group, because that's what happens. There's nothing more American than hating the next group of immigrants.
Right.
Okay. I saw an article the other day. It was when Italians became white, or how Italians became white.
Yeah.
Okay. Because when the Italians started to come in there was actually 2 diaspora for Italian immigration here. One, I think in like the 1840s, right after the Civil War, and then another in like the early 1900s, which is when my grandparents immigrated. And they were like the Irish people who had been hated for 60 years then became like pretty rotten to Italian people in the Northeast who came in. And there was quotas for Italian immigrants, and then that's why you have huge Italian populations in Brazil and Argentina, because they'd come to New York and New Haven as the ports of entry and either get in or get denied, and then they just kept going south. And so, you know, I remember people who were Argentinian Italian. It was a big thing.
Yeah.
But so I've understood the culture of hating the immigrant. That's a thing that I try to explain when I'm in debates about immigration, when I'm talking to people. It's like, oh, they're coming in and blah, blah. It's like, this is the same rhetoric through the entirety of American history. I don't know if it applies to European countries the same way, because it's more of a multicultural, because geographically they're so close to each other, they have to deal with each other more.
Right.
Whereas in America, it's like, you know, the Puritans come in this early 1600s, and then you have Germans who come and they have to go to Pennsylvania and they still speak Pennsylvania Dutch and German in these places. And then the Irish come in the early 1800s, 1820s or whatever, and they get hated on. No Irish need apply. You hear about this all the time. Then the Italians come and they're the ones who get mistreated by the Irish who are now American. And then the Italians come in, and how the Italians became white, because now there's a group of non-white people who are coming in and they get the persecution.
Yeah.
And then it's, whether it's, and then you have the whole African immigration slave thing is a whole immigration in heavy air quotes, is its whole own separate issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have it's always good to, you get your laborers, you get your force, and then we say, all right, we're done with you, and you marginalize them.
Yeah.
Whether it's Japanese internment or whether it's the Chinese Exclusion Act. Louis C.K. has a joke about, these pyramids are so good. Well, there's no limits what you can do when you just throw human death and suffering at something.
Right.
Oh yeah, how are these pyramids still built? Oh, we just had a bunch of slaves. They just died. It's okay. How did we traverse the country with rail so fast? We just threw a bunch of Chinese people into in a cave and blew them up. There's no limits what you can do when you just don't care about people.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting what you said about like when there's always a new group that then becomes like the new target for, because there's this like overarching, because Chinese people have been in the US for a long time, right? Like since the 19th century, and then like there's a difference between like the immigrants who came then and then like people of my parents' generation who are like usually a little upper middle class. But there's this like as far as the like Latinx sort of immigration thing going, like one thing that you hear a lot from East Asian immigrants is like the idea of we figured it out, like we came here legally, we did it the right way, and so why can't you? Like this idea of like we have this like model minority sort of, and I think when we're talking about like inter-immigrant sort of discrimination and strife, like there is this sense of like there is this lack of solidarity, right? Even though we can say like we have this oratorio that tells what is a very universal story, increasingly universal now as we look at politics of the southern border today. It's really easy to still disassociate yourself from that.
You have to.
And I just found this so interesting, especially given like the context of who we were singing with. This is, for me, when I saw this was like a very Asian American, very like Chinese American story of like becoming a part of this new country, and I don't know, this is my existential angst with like because a lot of my circles, because of what I teach, it's not an Asian American space, but it is, right? Like people who are immigrating from China or Taiwan or Chinese speaking countries are by definition Asian American and part of the diaspora, but the Asian American experience, as I've experienced, is not the same as theirs. And so, I didn't want to think too much about this, but like, I think at the end of the day, when we're looking at this piece, like who, as a performer, like what are you taking from it? And I think what you have to say is like actually really valuable, because it's not like, even as a so-called outsider, non-Chinese person, there's still something to take away. This like China Now Music Festival has been around. This is the second year. The first year was, oh gosh, I don't remember what the last year's topic, but there was like one piece that this choir did about like the Cultural Revolution and like the sending down of basically the literati, right? Like during the Cultural Revolution, basically it was like, if you are an intellectual, you need to go down and plant crops, because that is what is really important in upholding a country. And I think a lot of people who were in the choir were of that generation. Definitely. I think Charles was also literally one of the people who was sent down to plant crops because they were too smart. And so people's stories, people's backgrounds, like it's interesting to see how they like interpret this, this piece of art. But anyway, going back to like, New Haven Chorale and then this new choir experience. So obviously Ed is just a really, really effective teacher, I think. And, again, he has this expectation that we're practicing, but he's a realist about it, right? Right. Yeah. And then so contrasting this. So this was my first time for this performance. This was my first time working with like a Chinese choir, a Chinese director. or actually really being taught by a Chinese person, which is very, very strange, because I think the only other context was in college where I had professors, and like professors, I feel like literary professors are like totally different species.
Sure.
Yeah, if you're like a Chinese person and you make a career out of teaching Chinese to non-Chinese people, like I feel like you are somewhat special. But anyway, I just remember this one rehearsal note that was sent after rehearsal. It was just so blunt. I think at one point, Maestro Tai literally wrote, "Do not yell."
Yeah.
Rehearsal notes, because that was a thing that was happening. I think it was like the tenors who had really high notes and they were just screaming, right? And so it was interesting to see, like, number one, the bluntness of because I don't think Ed would ever be like, "Yo, you guys are terrible." Like,
I think he would, but I don't think he'd put it in writing. He would tell us like after, in a moment of frustration, being like, "I don't know what else to do."
Yeah.
You just don't. He'd be more polite. Be like, "I don't know what to do. Go home and look at it."
Yeah.
I think it'd probably be and put the piece away. Like,
he would say that. He would like be sort of nuanced about like if we sounded bad, which happens. He would be a little more nuanced about what struck me so much about like what the Chinese choir was about was like, I think there was one point where like the conductor was literally like, "This does not sound good. Like you literally sound bad." And like everyone around us was like, yes, we did. We sound bad. I was just so like,
that's kind of a Chinese thing.
It is.
It's definitely a Chinese thing.
Yeah, this idea of like being able to take criticism, very, very blunt criticism. It just feels like, and you could argue that like Westerners are just so soft and we're so precious. And
it's the individual aspect of being a person, as opposed to in Asian culture, where you have the importance of the family and the community around you, that has kind of gotten lost in translation. I mean, that's very broad to say. I mean, people still have commitments to their family and their community, but it's not held in the same importance as it is in Asian culture, in Chinese culture.
Yeah, it was almost as, I remember like so many times I got the stink eye from like other people in my section for like singing something like slightly incorrectly. And it's like, I mean, I guess if you really wanted to philosophize about it, it's like, yes, you messing up messes up the group. Don't mess up. Right. There's high stakes here. Right. Does not matter that you were right and the rest of everyone else was wrong. But like, but yeah, I mean, but the thing is, like, I can understand. So Maestro Tai has, like, if you read his resume, he's like, wasn't he like one of the first people to like graduate from a conservatory in China?
I think that was actually the composer. Zhou Long was one of the first people. I think he might have been in the first class at the National Conservatory of China, or whatever it's called, after the Cultural Revolution ended. However, I don't know what the way to just explain that is. Whenever the policy about you can't study music ended, and if you do study music, it has to be traditional Chinese music, because we don't want Western culture. We don't want Western culture influencing us. So I think that was the sort of thing where he was one of the first people. It may have been in the first class. I think that was mentioned at one of the rehearsals, that he was in the first graduating class. Which has really placed him as the right person to do this modern Chinese music. Yeah. Written in it with traditional Chinese folk song elements to it, which were great. I mean, hearing some of the other singers talk about how, like, this is like a child's song. We would sing this together, all the time. And it's like, that was, taking that, but then putting it in a classical Western style of singing. To see the two worlds come together, especially after it was illegal for however long it was. I don't know how long was the period of that.
Oh gosh, like
20 years, 50s to the 70s.
Yeah, something like that. It was like a very gradual sort of like in and out.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, despite the history behind it, it's like, the composer, the conductor, they're all serious musicians of Western music, right? I think Cai Jingdong actually wrote a book about Beethoven in China, right? So it's not as if they get Western music, and they get what like a Western classical choir is supposed to sound like, what classical vocal music is supposed to sound like. And so given that background, but like then you have this community choir, right? And again, like this community choir is like basically a group of people who just like singing. Sure. A lot of the folks, and this is like no shade, but like a lot of the folks did not read like 5 staff music.
Right. They were in the what's it called? Paijing?
Jianpu. So like,
sorry,
it's
I was
like
close. I had the words flipped.
It's okay. I appreciate the effort. But literally, like, if you've never seen Jianpu before, it's basically just you take the notes, but you just reduce them to numbers,
right?
Which is like fine, right? It makes it a little
sometimes. If you have to change key, well, it's easy for simple things, simple melody.
Yes.
The problem is if you start dealing with accidentals, then you have to redefine where do is. You have to redefine where number one is in the solfege.
Apparently, Charles like transposed the entire oratorio into Jianpu, which was like impressive. Because the thing is, like, again, like you said, Jianpu is not used for like big pieces of like, you know, music. It's like folk songs,
right?
You know, it's like the equivalent of like using a chord chart with like a guitar chord chart with like with classical music. But what that says is that like the people who are singing this piece at Carnegie Hall, right, the debuting this piece by this Pulitzer-winning composer, they didn't have like this Western music background. Like not that we do either, but like we do.
We do. We don't have formal conservatory training, but we can read music because we took it. You know, music. We took instrumental classes. You know, I played sax for 8 years. You played piano forever, so we at least know how to read music. And then we did big pieces that were mainstays of, you know, the modern classical music repertoire, things that were, you know, we did Carmina Burana as sophomores in high school. Like that was a big thing. Or juniors in high school. That was a big thing. It's like that's a mainstay of modern music or classical music that's done still today.
Right. So we have this like familiarity as to what Western vocal music, I keep saying Western vocal, like classical vocal music, traditional bel canto, whatever, is supposed to sound like. And not because like we went out and like learned it and studied it.
Formal conservatory training.
Yeah.
At least we like have an education.
Right. And we
experience it.
We grew up in a place and we went to a school that was that mainstream, that sort of thing. And so what happens then when you don't have that context, which I think is what happened with this choir, through no one's fault, right? Like if when you grew up, right, the version of vocal music that you hear was a certain oral aesthetic,
right,
and a certain sort of like, you know, so what I'm dancing around is the fact that like if you have ever, and basically if you're Chinese and you have heard church ladies sing, if you're a church Chinese person like I am, you've heard church ladies sing, it has a very distinct sort of shrill sound to it. And I think for most Western ears, you'd be like, man, that sounds awful. But the thing is that like what that is born out of, it's not coming out of a vacuum. It's like, that's what Peking opera kind of sounds like.
Okay.
You know, and Peking opera, even when it's done well, takes a little like used to. Yeah, it takes a little getting used to. And also like revolutionary songs of that era were just very, very bombastic and very, very like...
Yeah, they're marches.
Yeah, and like you hear people singing it. Like whenever I hear people sing, I'm just like, man, if I were singing that, I'd be so tired right now. Like that would actually hurt me.
Yeah.
And so given that being like their context, probably like for them to emulate that while they're singing, like it's not even just like, oh, we're singing in this style. It's like, we're just singing. This is what we're used to. Just like if someone told us to sing Peking opera, we'd bring in like our like bel canto training, and like long vowels and whatever. And and people are like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. They're different styles of singing.
Yeah. And so, but the thing is like, I get the conductor's frustration because it's like, you're not just like, I think what he mentioned before that like we spent so much time on like elongating vowels to the point of like ridiculousness.
Right.
You mentioned the da hai pronunciation before, which is like, it literally just means big C, and the word happens like 70,000 times in the first movement. In the alto section, and like for some reason, because of that ah sound, because it's so wide and potentially nasally, the conductor just ended up giving up and just saying, just pronounce it doha.
Yeah, right.
Doha. And I'm just like, what is this? Why? Why? But it really was just like this last ditch effort to like kind of correct what is
the pitch.
Yeah, pitch and like and just the shape of the vowel and just not sounding like, you know, nasally in the context of like Western classical music.
Right. And the difference between speech and singing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I'd love to be in a future where like, you know, there are really good Chinese choirs, right? Like there was this article that I was looking at before recording this that was talking about like the state of affairs of choral music in China, and in summary it's like it exists, but at very, very small measured amounts. Right. You know, there are conservatories in China, and there are people who obviously, we have the soloists there study vocal music. So it's not as if these people don't exist. It's not as if like there's this wall between like, you know, China being this closed off state where they don't interact with Western music. Because in fact, like during the end of the 19th century, when like, you know, European people started coming in, classical music was actually super popular because it was seen as like this very refined thing. And it really, and even through the Cultural Revolution, it wasn't as if there was this big erasure of classical music. It wasn't like outright banned. It wasn't like in like Eastern Europe or like Russia where they were like straight up like bans on non-revolutionary music. But it was rather like Mao had this philosophy that art and music exist for political gain.
Right.
And it's not as if classical music exists outside of that, but you know, it definitely set some limitations as to what they were exposed to. And on top of that, it was like there was, you know, even though classical music existed, it was not like the main thing, right? It didn't dominate like the cultural sphere as it does in Western society.
Well, and when you take a group of people for 20 years and say, no, you can't study music and pursue the arts because you have to go farm, that certainly puts a toll on your population's exposure. And their chance to go in and become a good piano player or a violinist or whatever.
No, and I think there is like definite, you could probably, I mean, someone who actually goes to conservatory in China could probably clarify this, but like I'm sure you saw like a decline in like violinists and pianists and flautists during that time. But like the thing is, it's not as if singing died out, right? Like, you know, you could say that like, you know, classical instrumental music kind of like dipped down during that just because there wasn't, you know, a space for that. But during the Cultural Revolutionary period, there were people still singing. It just wasn't classical music. It was for a specific purpose. And that shapes the landscape as to what people of that generation found to be like that vocal aesthetic. And we kind of saw, I mean, a little bit of that in the choir, right? And I think when we're hearing a choir sound like that, again, like my elitist, like Western classical music, you know, instinct is just like, man, that sounds really hard to listen to, right? It's kind of high and screechy. But you know, and I realized this experience when I first heard like our church choir, and I was looking around to my parents and I was like, are you hearing this? Like, are you hearing this? And to them, it was just like, yeah, they sound a little off key. And I'm like, no, are you hearing this? You know, and it just like struck me that like, you know, cultural context matters so much when it comes to like what we find to be aesthetically pleasing and not. I mean, on the other hand, a part of me will always feel like, man, if you sing like that, you're going to hurt yourself. Like you're going to injure yourself. But like, you know, all that aside, you know. So I think as a whole, being a part of this experience, it's interesting on like many levels, right? Like the idea that it was a piece that was not just in Chinese, it was history, it was storytelling, but also the meta of it. You know, like what do you think, you know, when you look back on this like 10, 20 years from now, like given that this will probably be one of the last times we will get to perform at Carnegie Hall?
Well, I don't know. When we have this in now, this Chinese choir went like, I don't know, 8 years ago and sang at Carnegie.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. So this is kind of not a regular thing for them, but it's not an unheard of thing. So I don't know. I'm not signed up.
Closing the door.
What I'm saying is I'm not signed up for regular rehearsals for this. Like, so we do have a few, there's, I think 3 people in our chorale who sing in the Chinese camerata, 2 of whom are from China and 1 is white American. And he sings with them regularly. I will gladly come back if they do a big production like this and do something, you know, maybe down the road. But taking from it, it was definitely, it's always an interesting experience because this isn't the first time I've sung a commissioned piece. You know, we had a resident composer for chorale last year, and although that was much smaller scale, and he was like a college kid, kind of. He was,
and we did a commissioned piece. And we did a commissioned piece in our freshman year of high school, too.
Right? Music that? Makers, which was that was very modern. That was a difficult piece to sing.
Yeah, minor seconds everywhere.
Like the time measure, the time changed every 6 measures. And they were like in weird like 7/12.
Yeah, how old were they? Like 13, and we're just like, 14, what is this? I just came to sing. I don't know.
Yeah, that was weird. So I mean, having the experience. All right, so musically having the experience as a singer, somebody who looking at this piece, newly commissioned piece, where you had to be flexible every week. So you'd come in and they go, we added 17 measures here, so reprint it. Oh, the tenors are a fifth up here, so do that. Like, as a musician, it was an interesting experience just because you had to be flexible and there were changes every week to the piece.
Right.
As a student of history, I found it really... the fact that it put a human face on the story of these, you know, hundreds, I don't know, thousands of immigrants who came to do this task where you're marginalized as a worker, and that's it. That's your usefulness, and you're done, and you're out by thanks for the help to let the door hit you on the way out. it contextualizes and it personalizes the story of that experience. And it just gives me kind of an appreciation for their story, and just on a personal level, because it makes it, like you said, easy to empathize with. And I think, and musically, I mean, it was the first time I've sung Chinese in Mandarin or Cantonese. I think we I really don't think, maybe a little bit, like 5 or 6 words in choir in high school.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've done like Latin, German, Italian, French, Spanish, English, and like maybe like a little Swahili we did a couple times. But never
world music.
Yeah, right. But to be able to have this experience, and Hebrew is a hard language to sing in. Hebrew is probably even harder than Chinese, I think.
I agree.
But this was a valuable experience, and I really appreciate it. And I will remember, not to say I don't appreciate Carnegie freshman year of high school, but it gives more context as now 12 years down the road, and being able to kind of have a little more experience under my belt and have more context for things. So I really do appreciate the experience. I'm glad I did it. I will definitely do it again in the future if called upon. If I get tapped.
Yeah.
But I think it was a nice experience, and also I really appreciated on a personal level the interactions I had with the people who were singing in the group, because it was our group of like maybe 35 people from New Haven. Plus, I mean, there was over 100 singers easily. So actually, I think there was like 200 singers.
Yeah,
so there was
massive.
Right. So we had our group of 30. There was groups from New York, groups from Kansas City, Dallas, Portland, Oregon. Charles' brother flew in from Sydney with his wife and family. So Sydney, Australia. Yeah, so it was an international like effort. And I was really touched at the friendliness everybody had too. That was a really nice thing, because this was really one of the few times in my life where I could be in the minority as a straight white man, that I could be in the minority. And as a group of 200 singers, there was maybe 40 white people in the group. So that was also kind of a cool thing. I did feel on the outset facing my own white privilege as I did feel a little bit outside, but the friendliness and the personal level that people were talking to me and made an effort to make me feel included. I appreciated that too on a personal level, outside of the musical aspect of it or the historical cultural aspect of it. I felt very personally, I appreciated people's efforts to make me feel included.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's I think one of those things that we're both in our 20s, and then your 20s, you're just kind of we're settled into the groove of work and what's next in personal life and whatever. But I don't think a lot of people our age are going out and joining choirs with 75-year-old
not at all
retirees. But it's just having that experience, being able to intersect with people that are different than you, right? Even if it's just the New Haven chorale, because those people are different from us
by 40, 50 years.
Yeah, and they have life experience and they have perspectives that are different from our peer group. And so to have that experience is super valuable, I think. There's so many kids in high school or did choir in high school or did orchestra in high school. And it just kind of drops off to a point just because your life gets busy. And I think that the importance of that community can't be understated, can't be overstated. And so I think, I don't know, I'm super grateful as well. I think it's just one of the things that will always strike me about this experience was that it ended up being so much more of a bigger deal than I thought it was, right? Yeah. On the one hand, it's Carnegie and it speaks for itself.
Right.
But on the other, it's you show up to the space and you walk on stage and you're dude, this place is packed.
Yeah.
Right. And then you look at the press release afterwards and dude, people care about this sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
And as a Chinese person, I'm just I didn't know that maybe it's because Chinese people in general gravitate to anything that is Chinese
sure.
and has a name on it, right?
Yeah.
Carnegie Hall choir, China, wow, big deal. Even if you don't know anything about music, but I mean, I just love the idea of just because I love choral music so much, the idea of those two worlds kind of intersecting, the clash of worlds is so crazy to me. But I think for me as well, I remember like the reason why I felt so compelled to join after you had mentioned it, because I just wasn't it was such a crazy weekend for me, and it was just wouldn't have worked out like logistically at all. But
you flew in on what? No, you flew in on Tuesday.
I flew in.
You flew in to JFK. No, to Boston.
To Boston.
Took a bus.
Yep.
And got there on no sleep.
Yep.
Oh,
it was
my
one
God.
of those like out of body experiences.
Yeah.
So
I can't imagine on how you felt just because you were up for so long.
It was sheer adrenaline, sheer performance adrenaline, just the high of being on stage, obviously now. But yeah, no, it's just one of those things that it's like you step on and you're just like, dude, this is important. And I remember like reading the music, the lyrics for the first time, the benefit of understanding Chinese.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
And being like, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like this is a humanizing story. On the one hand, you're just like, boy falls in love with girl and then boy dies.
Well, it's a simple story.
It is a simple
the boy's
story.
brother dies.
Boy's brother dies,
Yeah.
tragedy.
Yep.
But like on the other hand, you're like you see the role of the mother. Like that was the point that really got me.
Oh yeah.
The New Year's Eve sort of thing. Just because again, like I know I talked crap about Chinese New Year previously, but there is a certain truth to that idea of like separating yourself during. It's like how people relate to not being with family on Christmas.
Yeah, exactly.
And that experience does feel very universal, but also feels very Chinese to an extent. When I talk to the kids from China who attend my school, that's like the one thing that they have a really hard time with. This idea of not being able to be home, not being able to be with someone who's familiar, just little things like that. And so the fact that the story gets to be told through a medium that is not strictly just like China, right? It's told through like it's almost ironic in a sense that it's told through this Western music medium. If you really want to go deep, it's like it is the same Western music culture, Western culture that sort of oppressed Chinese people in history, and now it's being used as a way to uplift that same story. That's kind of cool. But I don't know. I'm grateful. And I'm glad that we did it together, and I'm glad that that this is something that we'll be able to carry with us. So
definitely,
yeah. That being said, great talking to you, and thank you for coming by.
Of course,
thank you for reminiscing. If people want to find you, where can they find you on the interweb?
I mean, I don't know. I don't really social media too much. I don't have anything. I don't know. Slide in the DMs.
Yeah.
We'll see you there.
All right. In that case, we will catch you next time. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone. Hope you enjoyed that episode of the Bad Chinese Teacher podcast. If you like what you heard, please do us a favor by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and continuing to subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms. You can find us on Twitter at Bad Chinese Pod and Instagram at Bad Chinese Teacher. If you're looking for me, Patricia, you can find me on Instagram at Patricia Liu, Twitter at Patricia SQ Liu, and you can check out my writing by going to blog.patricialiu.net. If you're looking for show notes from this episode, or if you want to find out more and get in touch, find us at badchineseteacher.com. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.